Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, criminal court, and other court issues as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me and my books and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. And if you have a tale to tell, you can contact me there too at dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. I'm very happy to have Darlene Orvieto on, Robert Garza, and Kim Gordon, and we're going to have a conversation about working together and looking at this well-oiled piece of machinery called the family court that's churning out families and how mothers and fathers should stick together and work on solutions. I welcome you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Yes, so we discussed doing this podcast to try to help create a conversation between communities who often find themselves split, such as the parental alienation community and the domestic violence community, and discuss the issues that keep that divide going and how can we come together and support each other and work together towards change. So I thought it was perfect to invite on Kim and Robert, and because they're both real experts in what they do, and I'm just looking forward to this conversation. So let's see, where do you want to start? Do you want to start on what the main divide is between the communities?
Sure, go ahead, Kim.
Sure. So I don't know if you guys are familiar, I assume so, with the term parent alienation was coined by Richard Gardner, who was a psychologist back in the 80s. He wrote some pretty disturbing things in some of his writing, which I recommend that you all go and reference it directly yourselves, because it is, I didn't believe it myself when I read some of the research that was referencing his writings. I had to actually go and read it myself because I was just like, wow, like, how is this term even being used in family court, given some of the disturbing things he said? And some of those things, God, I might be misquoting. I don't have it in front of me, but it's imprinted on my mind. But I remember reading that he said some things like, sex between adults and children, particularly fathers and their children, is not only perfectly natural, but biologically driven and should not be mandated reported. He said things like, mothers who report sexual behavior between the father and the children should lose custody. And so those are this whole framework that he built. We're still seeing that in court today, decades later. And I can speak from personal experience, having, my child disclose abuse, and I didn't know what to do. I was very disturbed by it, and I didn't quite believe it, but he was only 3, and, his behavior was also very disturbing. And there was one thing he said that just made me realize that there's no way he would know that if it didn't actually happen. He named a police officer who I thought was a woman based on the name. I won't say it here, but I found out 2 years later, after thinking it was a woman, found out that it was actually a real police officer. It was a male police officer in my county who had been removed from 2 different police departments for, we don't know. I don't know exactly for one of the departments didn't report why, but the other one was, he was removed for taking drugs from the evidence locker. And my son did say some things about being drugged, or at least said things that, were indicative of a child being drugged. And it was just the fact that he was able to name a real police officer that I had no idea who it was, never heard his name before. And just to find out, like I said, there's no way that my son would have, known that. So, and of course, throughout the course of my case, of course, nobody believed me. I was accused of parent alienation. I was accused of coaching my child. None of that was true. And that's how I learned about what parent alienation was and where the term came from. And so what I did was what any, I think, loving mother would do in my situation was I brought my child to a child therapist who met with my son alone over the course of 3 years. And she made 10 mandated reports based on things he said and things he drew. And DCF didn't acknowledge any of those reports. In fact, they tried to get her fired from her job for doing her job. Um, and even in my son, he had a forensic interview. Um, DCF, they basically pissed in the pool by, the day of my son's forensic interview. I got a call, well, actually, I should say, a week before I got a call from a DCF investigator. He introduced himself. He said he was going to be attending my son's interview. And I don't know why. I wasn't sure why he was calling me to tell me that. But apparently, I found out the day after the interview that he came into the room. It was on Zoom. All the panel was on Zoom. Um, and let's see, there was the assistant DA, the lead police officer on the case, I should say investigator. There was the head the head pediatric nurse for the SANE program in Massachusetts was attending my son's interview, a psychiatric nurse, and also a clinician that I had been speaking with for a couple months in sort of the aftermath of the initial disclosures. My son was 4 at the time, by the time he had his forensic interview, but apparently this DCF investigator, before he walked in and before my son was brought in, he told the entire panel that I was schizophrenic, which is absolutely not true. And I don't think even if that were true, it should matter, but that wasn't at all true. And so even though my son made disclosures that normally would or should result in, I guess arrest, he wasn't. Nothing happened. And I got a call the next day from one of the people on the panel who basically they called me to say, hey, we were told to call you and offer you an opportunity to bring your son in for a pediatric exam. And I said, well, why? It's been 10 months. Why didn't you call me? In fact, after I read the DOJ report, the outline of how child forensic investigations are supposed to take place, they were supposed to call me within 72 hours to have him physically examined, and they never did that. So I said this to the person. I said, why are they calling me now and offering this now, 10 months later? And she goes, honestly, I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I've never been told to call and ask the mother to bring in the child or the parent to bring in the child. And she says, and I would recommend that you don't do that because nothing's going to be found. And it would basically put you in the position of subjecting your child to unnecessary medical examination. So she actually was quite helpful. And she told me that in Massachusetts that it's very hard to get a conviction. She said it's so difficult here to get a conviction for child sexual abuse. She said that a lot of pedophiles from other states come here because they're so lax on prosecution, which really blew me away. And she also told me that the DCF worker, what he said when he came in prior to my son being brought in. And she encouraged me to keep advocating for my son, to be strong, and that, that there is a lot of corruption in the system. And I really believe she genuinely cares about children, and that she genuinely cared about my son. So I had to deal with all of that. So nothing, in other words, yeah, nothing really came out of that. The only good thing that came out of that was we were in court for 5 years. 10 months of that I was pro se, and I, really learned so much about the legal system and really kind of how to beat it in that time. I had to get rid of my handler, that's what I call attorneys. I call them handlers because that's what they are.
Mhm, mhm,
Let's be real.
mhm.
Um, but in any case, through really the grace of God, I believe that 5 years in the court system was enough to scare that, and 1,400 pages of third-party evidence that I prepared for my trial, which didn't happen. We
Mm.
settled out of court. I believe that was enough to scare, you know, the perpetrator to not continue to objectify my son. So I believe things have been okay, and that for now, and I keep praying that it'll continue that way. So it was really kind of a miracle, but anyway, being accused of parent alienation for simply protecting my child, is just, that's kind of where I'm coming from. And so since then, I've really educated myself, in a lot of ways, and I've become a parent advocate, and been kind of trying to advocate for protective parents. In my role as a parent advocate, I've seen a lot of, men and women, in that role who have been unfairly retaliated against for trying to be protecting their child. Um, and since we're here to talk about, the sort of divide that I have seen a lot of that divide when I first came into, I should say, the DV community, or the parent alienation community, as a victim, falsely accused of parent alienation. I saw that a lot of the resources were really women led, a lot of female led groups, like, I won't say them actually, because I do believe they've helped a lot of protective mothers in particular. But I was, interestingly, growing up in a home that was abusive, had abusive brothers and abusive father, and I've been in DV relationships. I also have been lucky to have some very close male friends that are very dear to me, and I think having healthy relationships with men has really helped me sort of see things clearly. And I felt like a lot of those groups were just, hating on men a lot, and really focusing on the gender aspect, which, I acknowledge that statistically, there is a lot of evidence that women are biased, there's more bias towards women in court. But at the same time, I felt disturbed in the amount of hate towards men that I saw, and also just the focus on themselves. It's like I had to remind, I mean, a lot of conversations and comments I made were like, hey, this isn't about you. This is about your child. Why aren't more women talking about their child and how their child didn't get protection and didn't get justice? And they really kind of, it's like all about them. And so I left a lot of those.
Victim,
Yeah, just
victim mentality. Yeah.
very, very much victim mentality. Exactly. And I don't have time for that. I'm
Mm.
like, I don't have time for that. To me, it's like I just want to protect my child, and I want to protect other children. And so I kind of left a lot of those groups. I started my own group, and invited, and my group was novel in the sense that I didn't, I allowed men in it. And I'm really glad I did, because I've actually met there's a few men in our group, and people that I've gotten to know, where, they're, interestingly, they, even though statistically this is very, very rare, but just having known these men who were accused of alienating their child for protecting their child from, psychologically unstable wives, who were subjecting their children to, psychiatric, or excuse me, psychological abuse, physical abuse. I found it very interesting. I feel like it's very valuable to have that perspective, because although it's rare, it really made me realize something. It made me realize that the problem that we're dealing with is that systematically judges are siding with the abuser, and against the protective parent. And that's really the problem. And that's systematically happening across the country. I mean, I've been in,
Mhm.
national groups where there's a lot of men, fathers in there too. Um, and, so I think that, so the gender issue, you know, we can get into more of that. There are more women who've experienced physical abuse, and there's a lot of statistics that talk about, that physical abusers are also more prone to sexual abuse of children. But that can be men and women, I've met.
Yeah, I don't even think we should define it at all by gender. In fact, I know so many states where men are persecuted so much greater than women. I would argue Massachusetts is not one of those. Massachusetts, I think women are getting. But anyway,
Yeah.
anything to add, Robert? Oh,
You're
you're
muted.
muted. Wait, start over.
Well, you started with parental alienation, so I thought that's where we're going. Then it went through a whole big thing. So, it was, I mean,
Well, I
I'll
wanted
say it.
to just
So
talk.
We're
parental
talking about the
alienation.
divide.
All right,
You
so
know,
parental alienation. I heard you talk about Gardner and the where that came from, the term. So I was talking with someone about this earlier. We can talk about where terms came from, but if it describes whatever's going on, I don't think we should even give Gardner credit or anybody else like for a term. If the word's a word, then it's a word.
Mhm.
Like Asperger's syndrome. You can look this up. It was Hans Asperger that came up with it. He was a researcher. He was complicit in Nazi programs and selecting children for death. But yet we use it. We still use the term. There's a lot of these things. So by giving people credit, you're just putting their name out there more than people should.
Mhm.
And so if in my opinion, if courts are already using it or people understand it, then why not use it instead of trying to discredit, whoever it came from? Like you're probably making it more known whoever came up with it than people even care to look into. Um,
Well, the reason why it applies, not to interrupt you, just to answer your question, is that the remedies that he put forth are still being used today. So in my case, they, accused me of parent alienation, and the remedy was for me to lose custody. So the remedies are still being applied that he put forth back in the 80s. So
was
that's,
that him or Warshak?
well, probably both, but I think primarily Gardner. From what I've read, that's more, those are the things he developed, the ideas and remedies that he developed. So that's what
Because
I experienced, and that's what's happening today.
I know Richard Warshak has implemented a lot of these things and said that that's how you fix the alienation is basically deprogramming the child. And to do that, you have to take them for 30, 60, 90 days away from the alienator. And so, oh, I may be wrong, but anyway, but that was my whole point about the parental alienation. And a lot of people use it wrong. They keep saying that they're alienated or whatever when they're not. The only way that you can use and that it's parental alienation is if the child is rejecting you, not bad mouthing, not any of these other things, but if the child is truly rejecting that parent, is parental alienation that it's stuck. A lot of people think that, oh, well, my ex is alienating me because the child's bad mouthing or you're saying bad things or you're withholding, someone's withholding the child, that's interference with child custody, that's gatekeeping. Those are real terms. It's not alienating. Now they're alienating behaviors, but people keep putting that in this big box. And that's where the courts are like, oh my gosh, like people are using the wrong term. So you're only alienated if your child's rejecting you. And so that was my whole 2 cents. But we can go on all day about different people that came up with different things that name the stars or whatever else, or even a computer, and why we keep crediting them for those things. But I see where the problem that people have with Gardner. But I think if he came up with a term that, even if it was rape, it's like, so we quit using rape from now on because someone that thought something different, but, it's just, I don't know, but that's just me.
I agree. I mean, it's not so much the term, but I do find it interesting. There's a correlation between the remedies, and I think you're right about Rorschach. Gardner wasn't the only person writing these things. But
well, if the experts today are getting trained
Right. They are getting trained in
That's a big part of the problem. I
Mhm.
mean, the GALs and all these people. Now, my GAL did the right thing, and my judge just ignored all the forensic psychologists, the GAL. It was astounding, which is shocking that that even happened in Massachusetts. But then once it got to the corrupt judge who actually had previously given full custody to a child perpetrator, it made sense then after I learned that. But yeah, these people are being trained specifically in a way that if you see A, B, C, D, persecute, target, take the kids away.
Yeah. And I just wanted to clarify one point that Robert made is parent alienation. I agree with you 100% that, for example, in my case, I was accused of parent alienation, but at no point did my son not want to see the perpetrator or the accused perpetrator. And so technically one of my arguments was he's not technically alienated because he was trauma bonded, right? So there are, the problem, and I will say the issue that the DV community has with the whole problem is that the courts are ignoring the fact that there's a lot of different types of reactions to abuse, right? It's and there are a lot of children, especially older children, not so much younger children, but older children who are abused, who are cognizant and old enough to understand that they're being abused and that it's bad. Younger children don't necessarily understand that, but older children do, and so they don't want to see their abuser, right? So that's not parent alienation in the cases where there is genuine abuse. But the problem is that there are cases where there is false allegations, and there are sociopaths making these false allegations,
Mhm.
and the children are being alienated in the
Mhm.
genuine sense. So then the problem is the courts are not, and judges and are not equipped. They're not trained in any way. And I would even argue a lot of the GALs are not adequately trained in DV and in child abuse and in child development to be able to even really tell the difference.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. If a judge says a child's coached, she has to be really stupid. And I'm talking about Barbara Hyland because I love to use names. Really stupid to know to think that's not abuse. And, even East Hampton police, really stupid to not investigate 12 years of false accusations, including tons of reports. And the DA dropped the case because they knew it wasn't true. I did not sexually abuse my daughter. And they know that, but is anybody doing anything about it?
That's
No.
the
And
problem.
and my theory, perpetrator is Chicopee principal who works for the state.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not enough qualified people to really be able to sort out what's genuine and what's not. And I
I, I
think that's the problem.
I think they are. Um, I think they know what they're doing. They know that they're going to give the child to the parent that perhaps is abusive, and they're going to make the other parent that has the money to pay the child support.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it's not always about, it doesn't always work that way. In my case, I wasn't the woman at the time with more money to pay child
Same,
support, but I
same.
was abused with child support. I think it's just perpetrator gets custody, loving
Yep.
parent keeps coming back to court to continually try to fight for their kids. I mean, Robert, you went through how many years of horrific accusations?
About 15, 16 years and 43 plus false allegations. But they weren't, I wasn't going to let them take my kids from me. And because they did what they did, I saw the legal loopholes. And so that's why now I'm closing all of them. Kind of like the issues that y'all had. I don't know, Kim, if you looked at my website or not, and you've seen like maybe 13 of the things the bills that I'm trying to pass. But the legal loopholes that people are doing. So I've disincentivized false allegations by taking time back. I've disincentivized, interference with child custody by giving someone three chances. And a lot of people are like, well, you want to put protective parents in jail. I'm like, no, in fact, this is the best thing you can do because right now it's a state jail felony in every state. So by amending that to 2 misdemeanors before it's a felony, it gives you enough time to go to criminal court. You can get that ticket dismissed if you took them to CPS or anything else, and you don't have to go the family court route where you're spending tens of thousands of dollars and it takes forever. You can get it solved very quickly. But it does protect protective parents because it gives you more time to get that protective order restraining order. Now, if there's real abuse, even right now, you can go get a protective order restraining order from the court or from a police officer very quickly. So
They
in
hardly
Texas,
give it anymore. They
what's
hardly
that?
they really hardly give protective orders anymore. I've seen women covered in bruises on their back, over their face, in places they definitely could not have done it themselves. Walk in and try to get a restraining order, and they just didn't get one. In fact, the judge that was there when I went with her into the courtroom said that, well, how do I know you didn't give those to yourself? And I'm laughing. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, how is she gonna bruise her back? She can't. So it is very difficult now. It's just, yeah, it's just not.
So in the same token, do you think that there's men that are being abused that they don't have any marks because, she hit him with whatever? And do you think there's men that aren't reporting that?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's
Uh,
tons of men that don't report abuse. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
problem, is that a lot of the statistics are really, it's hard to say that, because the statistics are really showing that, or more men are abusive, but at the same time, society's conditioned men to not report things because it makes them weak, or it makes them feel weak or look weak, like they're supposed to
Mhm.
just be quiet about it and take it. And I know with the men in our group, one of the men, he was, a very sweet, he's a very sweet guy. And clearly she was more of she's definitely the aggressor and the more aggressive personality. And she tried to run him over with a car. And she did get, she got charged with attempted manslaughter because the police had their head screwed on straight, thank God. But the judge didn't, the judge took his kids away and gave them to that person who tried to run over the father of the children. I mean,
Wow.
it's
So
crazy.
Yeah,
So
so I think the failure is with the system,
Mhm.
and that's what we're trying to fix with a
Yeah.
lot of these laws that I've created, and even parental alienating behavior. So if there's gatekeeping involved, if there's all this other stuff, cameras in the courtroom is going to solve a lot of this issue with judges playing games or making crazy rulings. There's also you can amend temporary orders. I've amended that code for all 50 states. And so, because usually your temporary orders are your final orders, because most people can't run the gamut and go through the guardian ad litem, the amicus attorneys, the psych evals, the home studies. And so, if you get a crazy ruling from the get go, you can't appeal that unless you go to final trial. So I actually amended the every state code for that. So there's remedies coming to all of this where you can't just keep people in legal limbo. You can't
Mm.
play the games. The attorneys, they're not going to be able to run up their fees by saying, "Oh, it's okay, just withhold them. I'll deal with it." And then you start running up fees, and then as soon as you start the litigation, here comes the amicus attorneys, the psych evals, the home studies, the parent facilitators, the reunification. It's like, here goes that money generator.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's the attorneys that are giving their litigants bad legal advice, and that's going to stop. In fact, I have another thing to amend. If these attorneys keep doing that, that's going to come back on them too. So there's a lot of these games that are going to stop.
I
There's
hope.
so many attorneys in Massachusetts that should have been disbarred so long ago. I mean, they're all wrapped into the system, and it's just really disturbing to see.
And then attorneys who've then been appointed judges.
Right.
These are attorneys that should have been gotten rid of when they were attorneys and
Right.
now get appointed as
Well,
judges.
in the system, in the eyes of the system, they're doing a great job.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, they're doing a
Mhm.
great job generating revenue for the state. So they get promoted.
Right.
Robert, I really would love to see you. I don't know, maybe you've already done this, but maybe you could write a bill to, first of all, prevent judges from continuing cases because the male I was talking about that's in our group who was run over by a car. has been in this sort of temporary custody limbo for about 5 years now. And he's gone through 5 different judges, and it just keeps getting continued. So that really needs to that is I think if the legal term tolling applies, where they just drag things out until basically the children age out of the system, that needs to
Wow.
stop. That needs to
Yeah.
stop.
So I have a 10-day rule for judges now, because of what I went through. And what did you, and I say this all the time, what did you have for dinner last Wednesday or lunch? You don't know. And so judges, and we only have 3 meals a day. Judges hear 10, 20 cases a day. They're not going to remember your case. So
Right.
giving them a 10-day rule that they have to rule within 10 days. And if there's a drug test that needs to be given, then it's 10, as soon as they get the drug test, after they get the ruling back or the test back, then they have 10 days to rule on it then. And if they need more time, then they have to every 10 days write and file into the case why they need more time to file. So, or why they need more time to rule. So this will stop a lot of the games where they're like, okay, I'll just rule. That's what they need to do right now. They have the opportunity to do it, but they're not doing it. Same way when they were going to give me my time back, they had the opportunity to do it in Texas. And because the judge didn't do it so many times, they do not have the discretion anymore in Texas to do that. Now, when you return the child, you shall return the time. And if they're going to keep doing and delaying these rulings, they're not going to have the discretion anymore to make that. And it's their own crazy time limits that they do and their rulings. You never hear someone in court saying, wow, my judge really applied the law on that one. You don't hear anybody saying like, like complaining because the judge followed the rules. It's because they're so one-sided that they're breeding us advocates, and this is the issue, and this is why they're getting what they're getting now, is because when you go way above one side of the law, and you're basically weaponizing the law against someone and harming them. And this is not just something that they're going to do to you. They don't understand that this is going to be generations of trauma and family and everything else. Once you leave that courtroom, they don't really care. They don't understand that you have to live with what they ruled. And I said this before, these judges that are ruling and making you have amicus attorneys and home studies and psych evals, I've told judges before they couldn't afford the ruling that they were giving me. You couldn't afford it on your salary. Why would you do that? That's just running, even if you do get the kid back, you don't have a place to live or can afford anything for them. So it's a lot of trauma. They really need to think through their rulings before they're just handing them out like candy.
Well, I mean,
But
they should think about, yeah, they should definitely be thinking about the effect their rulings have on families, but they don't. That's the problem.
some
You
of
know,
them are bought off. What do you, there's this transparencyusa.org, and you can find out, what attorney contributed how much to this judge's judge campaign.
So
Oh,
we
wow.
have that in Texas. I'm also with the Texans for Judicial Accountability. And so we're adding transparency and accountability to judges and courtrooms. And so that's one of them, is that we just passed that whenever a judge is, or an attorney, I'm sorry, that's one of the bills that we have, is whenever a judge and an attorney have donations between them or anything like that, that when you go into the courtroom, they have to announce on the record, hey, by the way, I just want you to know this attorney donated $5,000. This one donated 1,000. Like, y'all made donations to me. They have to announce it. That way, from now on, you understand that there's something there.
Texas seems a lot better, a lot better off than we are. Two things real quick. Massachusetts, we have a couple of the agency that I work with, as a parent advocate. We have a wonderful legislative team, and they've written a bill recently that was heard on the state floor. I want to say a few weeks ago, basically preventing financial abuse in family court. I can send that out to you guys if you're curious, but that is something that we're trying to address in Massachusetts, is preventing just all these different ways and financial abuse of families and parents. And also, we're going to be putting together, I'm going to be putting together a workshop soon. I have a woman who I won't, she's going to have a pseudonym, but she's going to be giving a workshop on anti-money laundering in the family court. And it's a three session workshop, and she's an amazing researcher. She's really good at genealogy. And she was able to figure out, so in her case, this is 20 years ago, the judge that she had basically forced her out of her own house that she had under her own name.
Judge Maha.
Yes, that was
You know me, names, yeah.
Maha, yep.
Criminal.
Meager. Was her last name Meager?
No, it's spelled meager, but it's Maha. I mean,
Maha,
she's
okay.
a straight out criminal.
Yeah. So she's, I guess, apparently retiring soon, but
Yeah, she's horrific.
she's horrible. I mean, there's a whole thread,
Mhm.
a whole Facebook Messenger thread about all the people that left in her wake. And in every single case, what I find interesting is she's taken the house from the person, men and women, from the person who had the house, ownership of the house. And so the woman is going to be giving this workshop who's has all sorts of ways to find out information. She was able to find out that the sale of her house, the real estate person who did the real estate transaction was friends with the judge, and I believe the judge's daughter bought it for pennies on the dime.
Well, and her husband works for the bank that she always deals with. It's insane. And the FBI said, when she brought it to them, said, "Oh no, we won't go after a judge."
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I really want to teach people, give them the tools on, I do trainings on, perplexity, how to make your own AI, how to load an AI with all of the laws pertaining to your state, and just being able to use it to write your own motions and strengthen them. We also want to teach people how to find the money. Like if there's, a lot of judges hide their bribes in real estate transactions. And so we're going to train people on how to dig into that and how to find, donations and real estate transactions and a lot of these front foundations that they create, or businesses that are fronts to basically launder their money and their bribe money. So yeah, that's we're kind of a little bit more boots on the ground. We do have the legislative sort of team, but I'm more boots on the ground, kind of guerrilla tactics. Like we're gonna find your money and we're gonna expose you for what you're doing to people. So yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of those things. So if anybody's interested in attending.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that. That's great. I'm so glad you're working with her on that.
Yeah.
But Robert, do you want to tell us a little bit about, just try to like make it make sense for the layman of what you're working on as far as the 50 states go?
Yeah, so I have robertgarza.us, and you can follow me on Facebook. The best place to follow me is on Facebook. And the only thing that the website's for is I've amended 7 bills right now for each state: time taken, time back, 3 strikes law, cameras in the courtroom, appealability of temporary orders, and some other ones. And so when you go there, you can put your state in and you can pull it up. And the first thing that you'll pull up will have a letter to your legislator that you just put in their name, your name, send it to them. And it's asking for a Zoom call and a little bit about the bill. And then another one that's about the background of the bill. And then the third thing on there is the bill itself. And so literally most of my bills are half a page at the most. And it's already amending their law to have the 3 strikes law built in, or cameras in the courtroom, or any of these other things. And once you get that email back from them or that phone call, you just set up the Zoom call, you send me the link, you'll be able to talk for 10, 15 minutes about why this would help you. You're their constituent, and then I'll kind of talk about what the bill is and why it's needed, and what other states it's passed in. And so it's about a 90% success rate so far with legislators taking the bill as soon as you get that in there. Now, right now is a slow time for them, So it's a hit or miss whether, because they're like, we got more things to do. We'll get to session when we get to session. So they may book you ahead of time. So right now we have, gosh, a lot of meetings booked, but they're not starting until October, November, December. So yeah, so that's kind of what I do with that. But definitely follow me on Facebook and watch all my reels because there's a lot of gold there. You can see other attorneys talking about these bills and why they're needed. You can see other professionals, mental health people, and I even have judges. I have police that want these bills because they know that they work.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, awesome.
And
Awesome.
I want to let people know that in this book, Raised by These Wolves, Child Trafficking Within the Foster Care and Court System, Robert Garza is featured in chapter 21, and Darlene Orvieto is in chapter 23. So
Awesome. 4
yeah.
books now. So, so is there anything else that you think could bring together the PA community, the DV community? So I'm in a just quick unique situation where my ex is a woman. Now I've dealt with what all that has meant to me, and since my children were taken, I've grown a lot because it does that to you when the thing that means the most to you is kidnapped. So I've always been able to empathize with men in a way because my ex is a woman, not because I feel like I'm a man, because I'm not. I'm a woman, but I know my gender. I don't do pronouns. I don't. It's just me. But anyway, so I've always been able to empathize with them, but also with the women because I've mentioned abuse in court, and look how things went. Things just so it's been a very interesting approach and way of understanding both sides, which is why I thought this, after talking to Maryann about something we saw on Facebook, we thought it would be a good idea. I don't discuss PA or DV on my, I'll talk about abuse, child abuse, because my kids are being abused for 4 years now. So, but I might share a meme, but I stay away from the charged terms because I don't want to alienate anyone from me. My goal is to support, bring people together, and to try to make change in the system. I encourage parents, anyone who watches this, to just try to heal your trauma, get out of your head, get out of your trauma, and look at it from a different perspective so that you can repair the divide and come together and understand that people come from different backgrounds. I mean, if I had a big history of severe physical abuse and other, there was abuse, financial, emotional, mental, that kind of thing. But, my ex was I call her the tiny terrorist because she's so little, but so I was never beat up. But if I had been in that situation, rape, beatings, whatever it might be a whole different scene for me now. So I've been able to really see both sides, and I just really want to ask the community to let's come at this as mature adults, remembering that the victims are our children. I'm not saying that we haven't suffered and we haven't been victims of a corrupt cesspool and of somebody's abuse, but the focus needs to be on how it's affecting our children and how the generations to come are going to be dealing with this, because we need to take the action now to prevent that. So I just hope people really dig deep and try to get out of their own way to look at the issues, and if you can agree to disagree on some things, or at least understand why. Okay, they don't like that term because of that. Well, okay, but we still have this in common, and that's that the cesspools of today, the state-run systems, are doing what they're doing perfectly on purpose.
Yeah. I'll say
money.
Darlene, since I don't know if we were recording when we talked about this, but early on in the show, or when we were in the waiting room, I had brought up the statistic that I read about there being 1 in 13 people are sociopaths, clinically sociopaths, and that's both men and women. And what I've learned about family court is that you don't end up in family court unless at least one party is a narcissist or a sociopath. You have to have at least one person, right? Sometimes two. And because, I've seen a lot of couples also just, like they break up, they get divorced, and they're very fair and reasonable, and they respect each other's parenthood, and they work it out and just do 50-50 without even using the court, right? These are people that are reasonable, understandable, logical people. Right. But so in order to end up in family court, you have to assume that there's at least one narcissist or sociopath or abuser involved. And that's why they call it high conflict. So I really think that, that should just be an automatic assumption. Now, how do we sort through who's the narcissist, who's a sociopath, and or both, right? And I think that there needs to be, first of all, more training from the judges and from all the court personnel to really be able to sort that out. And I'm talking about, real intensive training in psychology, child psychology, because otherwise they're just operating purely on their own bias, and that's not reliable. Because I've seen female judges be biased towards men, protective parents that are men. I've seen male judges be, and or again, they tend to go with the abuser, right? Because narcissists are tend to also be very convincing. They're very charming. They're I had a
Mm-hmm.
I had a
Well,
friend
most
that,
of these people are narcissists also.
exactly.
Most of them are.
Yeah, a lot of them are on power trips, right? Why do you become a judge in the first place? You want power. And so, the narcissists, they recognize each other and like, great, oh, I'm going to help you out. So, I think the problem with, the people that are falsely accusing or that are doing genuine parent alienation, right? These people are sociopaths, they're narcissists. And I think, and also the same problem exists for genuine abusers. You have genuine protective parents,
Mm-hmm.
genuine legitimate abuse, allegations of abuse from their children. It's like, how do you sort that out? Well, I think it would be pretty simple if everyone had adequate training in psychology, in the certain personality types, and also in child development and child abuse. There's very distinct
Mm.
markers of child abuse, and also of these personality types. And you have to be able to weed those issues out very precisely in order to really be able to get to the bottom of, like, are these children being abused? And it could be not just sexual abuse and physical abuse, but it could be psychological abuse from the narcissist abuser. And I also want to just say too that although, you know, I mean, not getting into the gender things, but there's a lot of a lot of women who are, they may not be physically abusive to their partner. They will be to the children, but there's a lot more, I think, statistically. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that, because I'm not actually sure, but I was going to say that there's different types of abuse that kind of are more gender specific, but the bottom line is both men and women can be, sociopathic and narcissistic, and abusive. So I think that is the to me, that's the tie between the two communities, is that, whether it's, they're just alienating and trying to gatekeep and parental interference, or if it's genuine abuse, there needs to be more understanding of those types of personalities and psychology and training in those personality types, as well as genuine child abuse, and not just like through experts, because not every case gets an expert. I think they should have these
Mm.
experts for free, offered for free as part of the court assigned personnel. They should have child forensic, you know, uh, experts available for free, who can weigh in on child abuse, and also psychologists should be assigned for free in high conflict cases, only, not every case, but in these high conflict cases, there should be a real genuine effort to clarify the issues, because otherwise we're all going to suffer. Our children are going to suffer, whether it's at the hands of a parent alienator or at the hands of a genuine abuser, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's the
So
problem.
who's going to pay for these professionals?
Taxpayer.
Court should.
The court should.
The court should. I
It'll,
mean,
it'll fall on the
Legally,
taxpayer.
they're supposed to pay for the GAL, and Linda Fidnick, retired now. I think she's dealing with her divine justice now based on what I've seen. But she ordered us to pay for the GAL. So, like, it destroyed my credit when I was rebuilding it. Like, it was just a shit show. And my lawyer says they do that constantly. So breaking the law has become like the norm. Let's just break the law. Judge, law enforcement. There's a law against filing false police reports. My ex involved 7 police stations. I have hundreds of reports out there. Holyoke police is so corrupt they won't even give me my reports at all. Like, I'm going to have to sue them to get them. So like, breaking the law seems to be no big deal. So I'm hoping, Robert, that your bills, my concern is this. So you pass a law, now they have to get followed. So the coercive control bill, okay? Coercive control is now against the law. Is my ex being investigated yet? No, they don't. Nobody cares. DCF now uses that law against loving parents to say they're coercively controlling the children. I mean, like, the system is going to weaponize everything, just like the predator parent would, and the judges have to follow the law. So I'm looking forward to change, and I think that if you close all those doors and you somehow hold people to account with some of these things you're working on, Robert, we could get some good results there. But how really do you make a judge who has a God complex thinking that they can do really whatever the hell they want? They take the oath to the Constitution and they violate it all over the place, crimes against humanity. So how do you do that?
You put cameras in the courtroom and you pass laws where their discretion is curbed to not let that behavior exist. And so, kind of like the time taken, time back, that's what I was saying, is that when you return the child, you return the time. So it disincentivizes attorneys giving bad advice, saying, hey, let's just take the child for, Christmas, but you're going to lose 2 Christmases in a row. They're not going to tell their person to withhold the child knowing that it's BS whenever that their what do you call it? Their customer is going to be pissed at them for taking 2 Christmases in a row. Their client, yeah. And so you just
because like you said to me earlier, most lawyers teach their clients how to do these things. Like, I know my ex learned from Elizabeth Quigley, who's like the most unhealthy, toxic attorney in Massachusetts. My ex would never be able to think this up on her own. So it must happen.
It's learned behavior. It's learned behavior. All of this is. And same thing with the judges. They're learning from the judges what they did before them and what they can get away with. And so if there's no accountability, so like the SCJCs here in Texas, they only prosecute maybe 1%, less than 1% of all complaints. So what we did this year is we passed SJR 27, which put 7 citizens on the SCJC to oversee with them all these complaints. So now it's not just lawyers and judges on this SCJC. It's 7 citizens now to oversee all of them too. So
wow,
there's things changing. There's a lot, and we can pass that in any state. So there's a lot of things coming, and
So you're creating accountability,
right? And what we're trying to do is create accountability and transparency. And along with this thing, I think every one of these days we're going to look back at this 50-50 thing when everyone's arguing right now about who wants to put children with abusers. It's not about that. That's the only argument they can come up with, which isn't even an argument. And so it's a human and civil rights issue. It's not a gender or DV debate. And
the starting point should be, I'm glad you brought that up. The starting point should be 50-50.
It is. So, I think that's kind of a standard that's being pushed. The equal parenting is being pushed in every state. It's kind of the standard now, especially in Massachusetts. The problem is again, we're putting this standard in place without upping the standards of training for judges and lawyers and everybody making these decisions to be able to determine with better accuracy if children are genuinely being abused. Because the problem is there are children being genuinely abused and being given to the abuser. So the 50-50 parenting thing, I'm down with as long as there's no abuse happening.
Okay.
But again,
Okay.
how do we get to
Okay.
the bottom of that? We don't have qualified people. And you guys mentioned taxpayers. Well, taxpayers are paying for children who are who are genuinely being abused, being put with the abuser, who are then becoming addicted to drugs, who are committing suicide, who are going out into the streets and committing crimes. The taxpayer is paying for all of that as well. So if we don't get to the bottom of how to sort through the difference between real parent alienation and real abuse and having more qualified experts or training for our judges, then we're going to be paying for the aftermath of children who are genuinely being abused and being put with abusers. So,
Okay. So let's take, you can agree with me that false allegations are abuse.
of course, yeah,
And you can agree with me that any kind of psychological and physical abuse is domestic violence also.
absolutely.
Okay. So 50-50 has nothing to do with domestic violence. Anyone that's doing domestic violence doesn't deserve 50-50. Do you have any other issues with 50-50 if there's no domestic violence?
Personally, no, I don't.
That's right. There is no argument for it. So if anyone finds there to be domestic violence, then you don't get 50-50. Other than that, why doesn't every state have 50-50? That makes no sense. It's a
Yep.
new started equality.
My understanding is that, I mean, because I'm in these national groups that, from people from all over the country talk in these groups, it seems to me that a lot of states have adopted the 50-50 rule, right? I mean, I don't know, are there any states in particular you're referring to that have not adopted 50-50 rule?
No, there's only maybe 7 or 8 states.
Yeah,
So that's a lot for 2025. That's
Right.
asinine.
Now get this. So if you think about it, judges right now have always been able to give 50-50, but they don't.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the issue. The same way that when they return the child, they return the time when they find out that there was a false allegation. They don't do it. They had the discretion in Texas, now they don't have it anymore. And that's what's going to keep happening is these judges have the discretion right now to give 50-50 to a fit, willing, and able parent, but they don't. They start at inequality, and they should never have done that.
Yes.
And I had wrote something the other day. It said every generation has its moral blind spot. Slavery was once legal. Women once denied to the vote. Civil rights were once denied to people based on skin color. Millions were silenced in the Holocaust while the world turned away. Today, courts deny children equal time with both parents, and society calls it in the best interest. History will judge these two, and one day, denying 50-50 will be remembered with the same shame as every injustice once allowed was.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So great way to close too.
Yeah, this is great.
That's fabulous.
I'm glad we all got to talk about this because even like on Facebook, I'm trying to unite mothers and fathers so there's no divide in this gender war. And all of this is happening to fathers, but it's not happening. It's like a back and forth thing. I'm trying to get people to unite as parents.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yes.
making that effort, Maryann and Darlene, because I do think we're not going to get things solved for our children and sorted through, for the people that are alienating, and which is a problem, and also, genuine children that are genuinely being abused. We're not going to get to the bottom of the problem in protecting children and preserving families and parent rights if we don't come together. It's really important we come together. So
Amen.
thank
We
you.
can't have a strong nation without strong families.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yes.
We're doing it.
100%.
And Darlene, how can people reach you if they have any questions?
Facebook, Darlene Orvieto, Massachusetts Corruption Exposed is a private and a public page. YouTube, Massachusetts Corruption Exposed. I mean, I lay out all my contact info there. And if anybody's in Massachusetts and has a story they'd like to make public, I have, even if you want to be anonymous, I have really good ways of doing that. So I'm happy to do that. I think exposure is key. And I lost the fear a long time ago when I realized, like, how is this happening? Like, this is crimes against humanity. I can't stay quiet. So
Yeah. Thank you for all the
Sure.
work you do.
And Kim, if anyone has any questions, do you want them to come through me?
Sure, yeah. Yep. And they can also, if they're in Massachusetts, go to Me Too Family Court MA on Facebook. And yeah, if there's any specific questions, they could go to you and you can put me in touch.
And what was
Okay.
your website again, Robert?
It's robertgarza.us. And you can reach me on Facebook. Just search my pictures on my profile. Most of the stuff's open, but definitely watch all the reels because every one of them has like a little piece of gold. For some reason now they're getting over 100,000 views. Like it's pretty crazy now.
Awesome.
Well,
That's
and I'd
great.
just like to add that, it's a little easier to share your information, Robert, because, we try so hard to protect victims of abuse, Kim, with certain things that are going on. But I would encourage people who are watching this, who go to that website, to share it to your state, because there is invaluable information on that website. And for people who, like myself, are beyond the trauma and beyond, like, I'm at a point where I have time, I'm excited to do what I can to get some of those bills moving in Massachusetts. I've had trouble with my legislatures who won't give me the time of day, but I'm determined to get past that. So share it all over, and let's just see if we can share this YouTube video also. Thank you so much, Maryann, for doing this.
My
And let's
pleasure.
just see if we can share it everywhere, because again, coming together would be our best bet.
Definitely. Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Robert Garza, Darlene Orvieto, and Kim Gordon. Thank you so very much for your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Thanks.
having me.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.